Hey, welcome back to Piece of Chaos. Big news. This episode, I have a guest. His name is Michael Garfield, and he is just a really, really interesting character. He's an artist, a musician, a podcaster, incredible podcaster, actually, I have to say. His research goes deep. His podcast is called Future Fossils. I'll drop a link in the show notes for that. He's a new dad. We talked about all kinds of stuff on here. I don't even remember where we went, but it was really fun conversation. We went pretty deep, and it went really fast. I'll have to have him back on because we got after it. It was really fun. It was good to hear from him. Check out the show notes for links to all of his stuff. He is a very, very talented fella and very interesting person to talk with. So I hope you enjoy my chat with Michael Garfield.
Anyway, so we are at we're at the clap.
So how you been, brother? Got a lot going on.
Yeah. There's a metaphor that I have absorbed and internalized working in science communication about the rugged fitness landscape, which is like a mathematical landscape where you in like an evolution, a system, an organism, a lineage of organisms climbs up to the peak on this landscape. It's like a mountain range, and you're always seeking more and more optimal adaptation to your environment, and you're always seeking a greater evolutionary fitness. And you can flip this landscape upside down, and it's a story about things running into the attractor basins where it takes the least energy to get things done that it possibly can, right? Anyway, so like, there's all these criticisms. I have found that it's a really useful frame. This rugged fitness landscape metaphor is a really useful way of looking at life and like where we are in life and how sometimes we get to the top of the local peak, right? Mm-hmm. But there's always something else. There's you like if you're climbing mountain range, there's a lot of going up and then going back down. And it's that like, oh, for God's sake, like you have to cross the valley. Yeah. Right? That's part of that sort of heroic journey and the ascent and the descent into darkness and instability and so on. And I think we're at that point now as a species, right? We're at that point where we are kind of caught in the machinery of an economic system and a way of seeing the world in the modern world, the West or whatever you want to call it, that we value convenience and we value expediency and efficiency, and yet quarterly returns we come at the expense of economic stability and ecological resilience, and the diversity of cultural strategies available to us, and the time that we get to spend with our families, and all this stuff. And so, I feel like I am living in a kind of microcosm of what we're going through collectively right now, which is the decision to leave a relatively stable situation for myself professionally and venture forth into the valley between what works and what could work better without the guarantee that you will actually survive that transit and into the make it up the higher peak that you can see before you. Yeah. And so it's a great heroic sort of narrative, even though I don't necessarily, I don't want to give too much credence to Joseph Campbell and, Nazi sympathizer. But this is where I am. And I think a lot of people listening, probably this is something they can relate to. It's like, all right, well, I want to live closer to the land. How do I do that? I want to spend more time with my family. How do I do that? I feel the daimonic calling to do something more with my life, to have a greater impact in the world. I feel an urgency, fire under all of our asses to act rather than to simply sit there forever kind of chipping away at ever more narrowly specified optimization functions.
Yeah.
And so you get, I'll send you a link if you want to, I don't know, include it in the show notes, this paper I wrote, or this essay I wrote years ago saying, don't optimize your life. Don't do it. No matter how you try to optimize, you're leaving something out of the equation.
Yeah.
And that something really matters. You're generating negative externalities and you're becoming less of a person. And, it's hard to make the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to be a mess. I'm going to become less efficient. It's like you could get your food at 7-Eleven and, you don't have to grow it and you might have a heart attack. Like, or you might get diabetes. So it's like you've got to balance decision-making across all of these different timescales. Yeah. That's where I am. Where are you?
Well, now I'm absorbed in that concept, man. It's what's crazy is that so much of the current level of bullshit is so unnecessary, really. So take for example, like the current state of, government making all these new laws to ban shit. Just fucking shut up and stop doing that. Like, you don't have to do it. Like, everything will be fine. And that, if they would just shut the fuck up and stop doing that, we wouldn't have to argue about it as a society, because we wouldn't even be talking about it. And so that's a real simple one. Like, just stop. Like, the fact that we can't look at all the laws collectively, and this is what AI is going to do, is going to look at all the laws we created and say, these all don't agree. This is stupid. We only need 10 rules, right? Like, here they are. That would be a great project to throw at ChatGPT just to see what it would come up with. It's the problem is if it then becomes our overlord, but just giving us the list would be really good to just be like, hey, we don't need half of this garbage that we've put as rules that we enforce or don't enforce or barely read. Being a human is actually fairly simple. And this whole idea of us governing you guys was based on the fact that there weren't that many of us here and we would travel together, the smartest people, talk about shit, and then come back to you and tell you what's going on. Not that we would sit here until we were 95 telling people what to do. That's easy to, like, we don't have to do that. Like, we don't have to keep doing that. Like, that is the thing that's so frustrating. And I think I feel like people are starting to wake up to that. It's how do you dismantle that ossified bullshit? Like, it's like, hey, like, I hope it's working, that we're seeing, like, I wouldn't trust my great-grandfather to make decisions on shit. Why do we like, it's just crazy. I'm not saying I'm not being ageist. I'm just like, don't you want to do something else? Like, all this shit with Trump, I'm just like, dude, you could have just been playing golf this whole time. You're not helping. So just stop. And now you're maybe going to go to jail. Like, what did you do that for? Just shut the fuck up and leave people alone. Like, that is so much easier to do, I feel like, than what we're doing. And I don't know. So it's just...
Well, yeah, like at one level of magnification, I completely agree with you, right? Okay, and I don't know I don't know the demographic composition of your audience, so I hope I'm not pissing off too many people saying this, but you led me right to the doorstep, right? Which is that, like, I'm a very sympathetic and like empathetic person. I really make an effort to see the context within which people feel like they are making rational decisions, and to bring as much compassion to this kind of stuff as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And so that puts me in a position where I see both sides of the argument, the intergenerational argument. around the economy and around political strategy and this kind of thing. So like I see both, I am a 39-year-old millennial. My parents are boomers. I don't, I am just sort of by default someone who sometimes has trouble taking a position because, I'm like actively trying to see both sides however many sides there are of any argument. And yet like the whole okay boomer thing, right? Like I do take great pleasure in, I feel a solidarity with everyone else who wonders why, so many people who had it so easy for so long feel the need to just buy up entire neighborhoods and Airbnb them,
Yeah.
And yet, like, the other piece of it is that when you play the Gestalt psychotherapy game and you go sit in the other chair, right? You sit in the chair of, people in political or economic power or privilege. And obviously, like, this is a telescoping thing that happens on both sides. Like, I am that person to people down the road in the other direction.
Yeah.
So, okay, anyway, disclaimer. But, it's like, I see there being all of these sort of systemic and structural dimensions that, that are shaping these decisions where it's like, people grew up in, internalizing a set of values and internalizing a set of, it's like the whole like profit optimization thing or the whole, we want to make expedient decisions and, we have to limit the number of vote holders, like, like stakeholders in these kinds of situations. And so we're going to cook it in a way that, there are real cognitive limits to our ability to understand all of the variables in play in anything, which is why the AI, one reason the AI piece is so interesting. So like, what am I saying? I'm saying that like, I have definitely been in the chair saying like, would you just, pass the goddamn baton?
Yeah.
Right? Like, would you just relinquish all of this wealth and power that has condensed and consolidated in your lap because this crony network that you grew up with and all these people that, you're like, now you were in your 20s and you rode the elevator up to the top and now you're all each other's buddies and it's just so easy. And then, but, at the same time, like, that same question of what we're talking about is in complex systems stuff is preferential attachment, which is, nodes in a network that have lots of edges connecting to other nodes tend to be the ones that get even more connections, right? Like if you look at, kind of epidemiological models like patient zero type stuff, it looks a lot like, the people that have already demonstrated that they're successful entrepreneurs tend to be the ones that get the next round of investments, because people don't want to take a bet on an untested upstart. This is why Hollywood, I'll send you another piece about why this kind of thing, like as the scale of the economy grows, like innovation gets harder and harder. And how this shows up in like the music festival world and in Hollywood and all this stuff, and yet the people who can take the risks are the ones who can afford to, right? And so I have sympathy for people making relatively risk averse and conservative decisions, even when they're disempowered. So I mean it's a very complicated topic, but like I guess all I'm really saying in response to your thing is that. It's almost like, there's also the trauma component, like if you grew up and like you were beaten by your parents and you grew up in the suburbs a really hard part of town, and it just like there are certain things that are like less obvious to you. Like if you've inherited a narrative that you just work hard and you earn as much as you can, these things tend to occlude other variables, other virtues. Like I think a lot of people's like the wettigo thing, where people can't stop consuming.
Yeah.
Has to do with unintegrated trauma. It has to, like hoarding and trauma are very, very clearly figured in a tight relationship with each other. Yeah. And so like I look at this whole thing of like, come on, grandpa, like step down from power. And it's like, yeah, you don't seem to realize what a horrible, what horrible consequences your refusal to move on and release this fixation with youth and like graduate into being an elder, which means handing the ropes over to somebody else who has a better grasp on what's actually going on right now. I feel great sympathy for everybody in that position. Like nobody, I mean, the confronting mortality wasn't even easy for Ram Dass, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't know. That's the end of that rant. If it made any sense.
But I mean, the thing that strikes me though with this, let's take Congress for example, because it's like easy to poke at, right? I wouldn't say we even ask them to take accountability for what they've done or give anything back at this point. Just like have a layoff. Like, sorry, like you guys, you've aged out this job. Like imagine if a baseball team was just retired players, dudes that retired at like 35, they didn't want to stop playing the sport, but they suck at it now. They're too old. So it'd be like, hey, I made the team, therefore I'm staying on the team forever until I feel like I'm done playing. Dude, I played. I'm old as shit. If I tried to play with young guys now, I'd be terrible. I'd be hurt instantly. Like, it's not okay. So, like, the fact that they don't have the self-awareness to be like, I'm sure they all have millions in the bank, more than they could ever spend, and just be like, you know what, I don't need to be here. Like, I don't know. I know it's not going to happen. It's a utopian wish that we would have the sense as a country to be like, we need to stop this. I think like Rogan had a joke one time. It was like Thomas Jefferson comes back from the dead, and in modern times, he's like, wait, you guys didn't write any new shit? Like, you're supposed to update this thing. Like, it's not, so there's some of a level of like, have the self-respect to just be like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. Like at the very least, be lazier. Get the fuck out. Like you want to wear a suit every day? Come on.
There's a certain paradox here inherent in what you just said. And I'm glad you went there before I did, kind of preempted it, which is, yeah, actually, when you look back at the founding writings of the United States, right? Thomas Jefferson saying, we actually should have a revolution every 20 years, like completely overturn this stuff.
Yeah.
But what are we doing? We're in 2023 and we're still pointing to we're still making this argument to the authority of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
Like that was the hilarious thing to me about seeing Hamilton on Broadway become such a hit. It's like, or like really any of these programs, and I hope I don't get myself in trouble saying this, but like, everyone's debating, whether there should be like the debate around like black elves in Rings of Power or like Black Ariel in Little Mermaid is to me completely missing the point, which is that everyone has developed like Stockholm syndrome, and like that's the hill we're trying to die on, rather than why don't we have people making like it's like Uncle Tom nonsense. It's like, you really just want to live in the house with the last sort of generation of powerful content creators, and like you don't want to make a new story.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
like okay, awesome, Michael Burnham. I love Star Trek Discovery. You know, but like also I would love to see radically new Afrofuturist sci-fi instead. You know, if I had to choose one or the other, right? Like, why not move on?
Yeah.
You know, and so Hamilton, it's like, okay, like maybe I'm just being a bitch. Maybe like because I love Lin-Manuel Miranda, like, dude, oh my God. But like at the same time, is it really a victory to just recast the slave owning founders as people of color? Like, or could we have carried the football all the way to the other goal, you know, and like actually said something truly new? And I think that's kind of to your point, probably, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand how anybody is still perpetuating any of that bullshit in this day and age. There's really no excuse. Like, to deny how we got here is bullshit. You can't. Like, you shouldn't. And to perpetuate any of that in your life is also bullshit. Like, I forget, it was like Sam Harris or somebody was saying, like, this would be as stupid as categorizing people by their eye color. Like, it is absolutely meaningless, yet humans throughout time have done it. It's just like, okay, let's agree to not fucking talk about this anymore. It doesn't or make any decisions on this anymore. Let's move forward. Like, God, we're slow at moving forward. Like, to your point, like, you're millennial, I'm Gen X, right? If we're going to categorize everybody in 10-year brackets, like, it's crazy that I'm the last group of humans that doesn't know the world before the internet. Like, that's insane, right? And there's a bunch behind me in line that have never changed and still won't. And, you know, we should be adapting faster, I guess, is my point. Like, if you look at the way AI came about, was it 2 months ago it didn't exist, and then all of a sudden, bang, GPT is everywhere. The ideas that are progressive ideas that are just natural, like truths about humans and societies, like, shouldn't take this long to take hold. You know, like, we have at the exact same time right now actual slavery happening in parts of the world. That's insane. Like, the planet's big, but it shouldn't be that big at this point. It is connected now. Like, we should be like, oh, hey, we all figured this thing out. Like, when I see places that can't get like water or food, it really makes me sad, because I'm like, we have planes and helicopters and shit, right? Like, we have Costco's full of water, right? Like, what the hell is going on? It doesn't make sense. It's all bullshit. So I really want the utopian, like, planet, what is it? Operating manual for Spaceship Earth should be legit the operating manual for Spaceship Earth. Have you ever read that book?
I mean, that's I haven't. That's Bucky Fuller, right?
Yeah.
That's her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, though. I think it's going to take, and I talk about this a lot on Future Fossils, you know, if we're going to look at capitalism through the lens of what I would argue is a kind of more general theoretical framework for addiction, right? And this is to the first thing I said on this show, right? Like, you're climbing and you're climbing and you're climbing an ever more narrowly specified and therefore unrealistic optimization function. And like, at some point, you know, an addict sees everything through, well, like Requiem for a Dream, right? Like, how am I going to sell my mom's TV to get my next fix? Like, you're not a complete multivariate behavioral complex anymore. You know, you are extremely predictable. And then at some point you hit bottom and survive if you're lucky. And, you know, I think that the entire conversation around collapse of the economy is really a conversation about our addiction to a narrative of value creation through the mechanisms of capitalism that is self-undermining. And I think that, you know, in a kind of a Freudian death drive kind of, or maybe it was Lacan, right? Anyway, it was psychoanalytic, you know, conversation around the death drive, which is, you know, this urge to transform, but if you lack the cultural or the institutional container whereby your transformation can be held, and you know that people tend to get stuck in these neuroses and then undermining themselves because this sort of aborted desire to become, you know, to reach your, you know, to fulfill your potential, you know, your destiny, will continue to manifest itself unconsciously if you won't manifest it consciously. And so, you know, I think that that's where we are as a civilization right now. I won't say a species because there's a lot of people that aren't doing this, you know, like this is why the indigenous perspectives are so important in this conversation. But I mean, even there, like due to reasons of trauma, like addiction figures into that end of the conversation also. Anyway, holy crap. Okay. So what am I saying? I am saying that I think that we're going to have to take a really serious hit before we come around. Because like when I was hosting Complexity Podcast, you know, I've got one more episode before we shutter that show. And it's going to be great. Episode 106. I hope people keep an eye out for it. But like episode 33, I think it was, I talked with two climate scientists, Tim Kohler and Martin Scheffer. And we were talking about how hard it is to coordinate climate action. And we were comparing it to, like, well, maybe there's a way that we can do for climate like what we did with smoking, you know, where suddenly everything changed and the norms around all of this changed relatively overnight. But the problem with, with that analogy is that it's a whole lot easier to realize, you know, that, oh, you know, my dad got emphysema, right? That same kind of visceral, immediate, palpable reality check for climate is like a hurricane destroys your city.
Yeah.
You know, and so the question of just how bad it has to get for us before we are all willing to agree on the story and make a change together is, you know, it's a lot harder for most of the people I've spoken with in this conversation and in adjacent conversations to, you know, it's like, I think we may have kind of crossed the Rubicon as far as all of that stuff, to use another sort of, you know, out of date geopolitical reference. That, like, I think that we, you know, if I guess what I'm saying is, like, we may have to end up in the ecological emergency room on a respirator before, you know, because like the COVID should have been the intervention.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people expected it would be.
Yeah.
And then everybody was just like, so I'm about to write this book about Jurassic Park and the the last 35 years, and that how the themes of Jurassic Park have really become like kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And like, look at what we're living through right now with, COVID and AI and all of these different, deep fakes and all of this stuff through the lens of Crichton's techno thrillers. And like one of the things that, it's like, well, in a weird way, the more attention we bring to this stuff, like the book was a victim of its own success. It became such a compelling narrative that after 2 books and 6 films and God knows how many video games, all of which focus on how this is a bad idea. Like most people want to go to a dinosaur amusement park still, right? And it's like, so there's this weird thing where it's like like COVID.
It's my favorite ride at Universal.
Oh my God, right? Like, they do such a good job of making these horrible scenarios something that is like really entertaining and fun. And so at any rate, it's like I look at COVID and the reason I bring all that stuff up is because they don't really do this in the movie. They don't capture this nuance. But in the book, having just reread the book, it's not just Dennis Nedry's sabotage of the computer systems that topples Jurassic Park. John Arnold manages to get the park systems back online.
Yeah.
But not the phones. And Ian Malcolm is wounded from the Tyrannosaurus attack, and if they can't call the mainland, he's going to die. And so Donald Gennaro, who actually is a surviving character in the story, leans on Arnold to give the system a hard reset because there's still bugs in the code in the RAM that are preventing them from turning the phone systems back on, even after they reset the code to its original instance and got rid of Nedry's interventions. There's still it's still all bugged out. And so they intentionally shut down the park a second time in order to basically have you tried turning it off and turning it back on?
Yeah.
And so I look at the economy, and the thing that all of the complex system scientists I was talking to around, when the first year and a half of COVID, they're like, if anyone would listen to us, the economy is a complex system, right? No one like they say in Jurassic Park, no one has actually ever turned off all of the systems and tried to turn them back on again.
Yeah.
And we don't know if we will be able to, they made a huge, huge gamble saying, what, let's just, and, honestly, I understand it. I understand why you're like, oh, let's just lock everything down.
Yeah.
And we've got to stop the spread of this disease. And, we're going to take care of people for lost wages. And, we'll keep feeding capital through this system, to you're pumping blood through somebody when you have to stop major body systems for a real intensive surgery, right? But bone marrow transplants, quadruple bypasses, there's a huge risk that person's just not coming back from general anesthesia, right? Yeah. And so here we are now, and we're in a recession that is, I don't think there's much argument that this recession is because it's a consequence or a knock-on effect of being addicted to the flow of capital because
runaway greed.
Everyone is so plugged into. It's not just runaway greed of the people in power. It's you're living in a food desert. You're dependent on just-in-time supply chains. Everybody is complicit in this in one form or another, more or less. So, it's just I look at this and I think we really are in what is, from a kind of a storytelling angle, a very compelling story, where, all bets are off. You don't know if the characters you love are going to live or die. It's exciting. It would be easy to pitch this story. But like when you ask simple questions like, well, why can't we make Bucky Fuller the required reading for Civilization? I mean, the TLDR of all of that is that you have to really understand in a deep way why that matters. And the more insulated you are from the instabilities of the breakdown of the self-maintaining kind of resilient processes in all of these systems that have been messed with, it's not something that's going to feel urgent to you, and like to the degree that all of us are distracted by, the golden age of narrative television, or political conflict, then, it's just like, how are you going to get? It was funny. It was like that was like the number one question among social scientists and ecologists the whole time I was working at SFI was, how do we get people to listen to us?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you can't really, because life is still too good for them. Like it's still, you can, you might go a week where eggs cost $12 or you can't get diapers, but you're still expecting it to come back.
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's a lot to process but also not in any righteous way, but there certainly seems to be a true north that should be agreed upon that isn't that crazy to understand. Like, I don't know, man.
Do you have a sweet tooth?
It's just so many people, so many failures of the ability to create critical thinking in a mass population. The education system is so geared strangely, and like, yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot to take in. So I think, going back to your earlier point, like, it is, you can't control it, but I feel like it is a responsibility to at least try to communicate this stuff effectively in as many ways and hit as many people with information that resonates with them as possible, so that they can be like, oh yeah, I never thought of it that way. Like, that's a hard thing to do just on any subject, any topic, to get somebody to be like, oh yeah, I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, I'm going to change my mind, or I'm going to think about that. Like, that's just on anything. Like, hey, Pepsi sucks. Like, I never tried Pepsi. Let me try Pepsi. I've always had Coke. Oh, you're right. It is sweeter. Like, I don't like it better, but thanks. Like that, it's Coke or Pepsi. Like, just anger, and like that got so ramped up, needlessly and falsely. And like, I don't know how people still can't see through the bullshit. Like, I don't get it. Like, I just watched the documentary on Waco, which I don't know if you're familiar or if you watch that, but like, I
haven't seen that documentary, but I do know that story.
I mean, I thought I kind of remembered the story, but I didn't remember, like, after watching that thing, I was like, it went on for like 51 days, right? Holy shit. So it's like, well, none of that really had to happen. Like, it's a shame that happened. It's terrible, but none of that really had to happen. Like, across the board from both sides, the people holding themselves up in there and the government shooting at them. Like, that was such a waste across the board of everything that, objectively. And it's crazy because I don't want to give a spoiler alert, but like in the documentary, they speak to people that were there. and were part of that movement that seem to still to this day believe in what was being taught. And I'm just like, holy shit. But I mean, that was a different one because it didn't seem like, at least for the moment, that guy was necessarily surrounded in riches. But when you look at like con men, the most successful con artists in the world, we should be looking at like you should be able to spot the con, right? Like how do people with no money, week to week, barely getting by, think they should send $10 to Trump and think that that's okay and not realize that's a con? Like, how do you not get that? It's so weird.
Economist Thomas Frank wrote a book back when I was still in college at the University of Kansas called What's the Matter with Kansas?, which was exactly about that. It was about how the Republican Party had learned to co-opt the values of rural America and spin a story that convinced people that this group was acting in their interests when in fact they were just transparently being exploited. And then they were electing people that were voting against those interests, like consistently. But like once you have them in, what are you going to do?
It's so crazy.
It's a very, very bizarre bug in human cognition, and it's not. I think it goes both ways. I would say that the same can be said about the Democratic Party and the progressive left, right?
Yeah.
Like did like the Occupy movement really? Did those kinds of people really want somebody like Hillary Clinton in, or even Joe Biden? Like these are not, So it's funny because I didn't expect to come in and be having like a conversation that's like so focused on American politics with you, but like I think to the extent that I can meet you at how all of this is about a mismatch between like everything we're talking about is a mismatch between the scale at which we are evolved to understand and the scale at which we are required to act in this world, in like the modern world. And how like, David Krakauer, one of my favorite kind of encodings of his work was in some of the statements that he made about how the modern era is defined by the accumulation of knowledge collectively outpacing the ability of individuals to learn. And so it's not just a matter of, us losing the wheel with AI or the economy. Like these things go back centuries to even the loss of the quote unquote Renaissance man. Like I had a conversation with Andrea Wolf on Complexity Podcast a while ago about her biography of Alexander von Humboldt, who is less well known in the United States but worldwide acknowledged as like the greatest naturalist and explorer that ever lived. And he coined the term ecology to give you a sense of this dude's impact. Like he came up with maps of international thermoclines where you could see similar ecosystems growing at similar altitudes on different continents. This guy was a genius, inspired Charles Darwin. Anyway, like he lived at a time when like by the end of his life, he was, and to your point about Congress, wise enough to realize he could no longer hoof it around the planet himself and collect all of this information and make sense of it all himself, and sort of became the hub of an international network of explorers and researchers working in different specialized domains that were younger and more physically able than he was. Yeah. And so, this is, you start to see something like what you see in other kind of structures, like, the more kind of traditional military structure where, you learn and age and develop a strategic understanding, and you end up becoming a general, but then you're kind of removed from the theater of war, and young men are dying for the cause, and that's kind of messed up. And also, you can never really respond to the updating state of conflict at the front lines. That like the bigger the conflict, the longer the the latencies in communication, so like these are things that are just kind of built in to everything. But the point is that like that Humboldt was someone who really lived on the cusp. It was like the last person who could really hold all of scientific knowledge, like the cutting edge of science, in one person's head. And like at the end of his life, you see that kind of thing fall apart. And now we have a very different problem, which is that not that we know too little, but that collectively we know too much, and we don't even know how to recognize one another's expertise in a different area, like a different domain of knowledge. Like, how does an expert climate scientist, they're sitting, like those people are sitting on one end of the conversation being like, why won't anyone listen to me? Yeah. And then on the other end of the conversation, you have these people in the Navy that we implicitly trust with our lives on a daily basis that have nuclear authentication codes and stuff like this. And they're saying, you know what? UFOs are real.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, I don't know. And it's like, okay, no, like this is a serious, collective intelligence problem. It seems intractable, right? Which is that we've lost the plot.
Yeah.
We don't know how to even listen. Like, who are the experts we should be listening to anymore? Because there's too much information.
Yeah. The aliens really need to do a better job if they're going to come and like unite us, because that can't be divisive too. Either there's aliens or there's not aliens. Like, you can't just fly around. Everything to me looks like a drone right now. I'm just like, it's probably just a drone. Like, what do we do? Like, what are we like? I don't know, man. I want to believe.
We've probably already crossed that, right? Like, we've crossed that point, right? Like, I don't know if you've seen the Netflix series that came out recently called Top UFO Secrets Declassified, I think. No. Oh, man.
Is it good?
It's brutal. It's so hard to watch this because, first of all, it's really, it's Netflix, right? So it's really sensational, and they're using CGI to do these dramatic recreations of people's testimony. And so, like, there's already kind of a problem with, like, you don't, like, what's real and what's not. And, like, there's lots of disinformation in this field already. Everybody knows that. But, like, over 6 episodes, there's also quite a bit of, the whole UFO disclosure conversation has moved quite a lot in the last 10, 15 years from when I was like into it in college, and like there's so much more declassified material coming from really, really authoritative or seemingly authoritative sources. And it's very detailed, and it's very consistent internationally. And, you get these stories about, like, one thing that's just super consistent in this literature are sightings where, like, thousands and thousands of people saw this stuff at the same time.
Yeah.
And yet, like, I don't know if you've seen that meme going around where it's like the UFO lands, the alien comes out, and then the guy who makes the first contact is like, oh, sorry, man, I've just had a lot going on. And I think that's where everybody is. It's what you're talking about. It's like, we're already there.
Yeah,
aliens have been, if you're to take this stuff at face value, which obviously you have to be careful about how much of it you take at face value, but like, if even 1% of this is true, then, we've made first contact as a species like thousands of times, and still most people don't believe it.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
How are we going to get anything done?
I don't know. I thought we solved most things already in this podcast. We were pretty. I think we cracked the code, man.
Dude, I really hope that people, I don't get like hate mail from people whose, latent anxiety issues I've sent into a catastrophic free fall, like I wrote a story years ago about deep fakes and like what a mind fuck it was going to be.
Yeah.
An oral history of reality, or the end of reality. And a lot of people wrote me afterwards and they were like, oh man, that was really scary. That made me, I was really, really unsettled by that story. And I was like, well, you missed the point of that story, which was that we learn new strategies for making sense. That we respond to what people like John Vervaeke are calling like the meta crisis or the sense-making crisis by coming up with new institutional structures and new ways of collaborating on the construction and verification of knowledge. And we become more comfortable with uncertainty and how to communicate uncertainty, like how to communicate in ways that, like the problem with so much of scientific communication is that it acts as though these, like we figured it out, we solved it.
Right.
And then when the update happens, when new research comes out, then people lose faith in the scientists.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, yeah, I was trying to believe you, and now you're clearly changing your story. And it's like, no, we need ways of making people more comfortable with the fact that we don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, that's the basis.
Or
science is an action, not a noun, right? It's a verb.
Right.
And
right.
It should be changing. Otherwise, it's a tough one. And we came through the pandemic really kind of messed that up worse than it even was before that. I mean, we could laugh about flat earthers, but we shouldn't be laughing about, whether there was a pandemic, where it came from, and all that kind of shit. It's just like this whole conversation needs to change dramatically. It's a very immature conversation that's going on across the world, quite frankly. Very immature if you really zoom out too, right? Like fighting over land. Like I say this to my son all the time because he brings up like TV shows and like, in cartoons and stuff like that. There's the bad guy wants to rule the world. And I'm like, why? I don't give a shit what my neighbor does, and he is 50 yards from me. Don't care. Don't care what he does, nor do I want to tell him what to do, unless it impacts me. So how does the mind warp? I understand leadership and that some people need leadership, but it boggles my mind how there's people that want to do that job and more so impose their will, whether right or not, on people. Like, just ideas, man. Do whatever you want. Just leave me alone. We need collective things like rules so we all drive on the same side of the road and it's not chaos. Like, that's cool. I get it. Like, let's stick to those. But like the wanting to rule thing, I'm just like, God, that's terrible. What a terrible thought that is. It's you get really nothing out of it. Like, if I could make my neighbor take my garbage out for me, like, would I sit on the porch and watch him? Like, that's basically what you're doing. Is like, yeah, take my garbage out for me, sucker. Like,
yeah. I mean, William Irwin Thompson used to talk about how there had to be a decoupling between like spiritual authority and political power. That we needed. It's like authority is really two different things. And I look at these situations and it's cliche at this point, but like we know we have, as a species, we have known for thousands of years that the folks who want to be in charge are precisely the folks who should not be in charge.
Yeah.
And yet, the only way that you get elected in our system as it stands is if you have the time, the resources, the charisma to take it on as a full-time thing, right? And it's like we've got the whole thing is set up to encourage extremely successful narcissistic sociopaths that are really, really good at recruiting people into their cons. To your earlier point, you know,
I think Duncan Trussell just said we've created the Olympics for sociopathic narcissists.
Exactly, Duncan. Got it on the head. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And so and then, you don't like you win the Olympics, great. You get a sponsorship deal.
Yeah.
You win the presidential campaign and lives are on the line, So again, this is one of those things where it's like
but you can't be old and be in the Olympics. We missed that's the rub. Like you can't be out of not willing to change. It isn't even an age thing. It's a wisdom thing. And I think we were lulled into this idea that just because you get old, you also get wise. I don't think that's necessarily the case. They're not the elders.
Oh, definitely. Right.
That are in there.
Right.
They're not the best of us that have learned the most about life and come out. They're not all Buddhas,
Right.
Like they're just ossified in their role, clinging to something for some reason, more money, more power, I don't know, laziness, whatever.
Let me ask you a question. I think about all this. We kind of talked about this a little while ago in this conversation. I think about all of this in light of the fact that our culture is fixated on youth and on ability and on, we have just billions and billions of dollars devoted to forestalling for as long as possible the inevitable transition into the third act of a person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a huge piece of why it seems like, there's the more sympathetic angle, which is that a lot of boomers can't retire, they can't, because we're all stuck on the accelerating treadmill. But there's this other piece, which is that, Botox and this kind of thing. And, a lot of the people that I've spoken with since I started Future Fossils in 2016 have pointed to the fact that at least in the America and the cultures that America has really influenced, there aren't a lot of surviving rites of passage, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got your driver's license,
yeah,
right, or you're old enough to drink,
yeah.
But the problem with being old enough to drink is that lab rat studies show that even the equivalent of moderate drinking in adolescent lab rats stalls out development of the hippocampus. Like that so I look at Brett Kavanaugh and these people that were binge drinkers in college, and it's you might be it's kind of obvious that you stopped maturing emotionally at 23, maybe at 20.
Yeah.
And so we are being ruled by these people that are adultolescents. They're teenagers in the bodies of old men and women, and whether or not they were binge drinkers, we have a culture that is obsessed with, the cougar mom competing with her daughter for mates. It's so I guess my question to you is you've spent a lot of time in and adjacent to, people that are thinking about, psychedelic rites of passage and stuff like this. And, I would love to give people something kind of empowering, like leave them with something other than just like complexity and despair in this conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, so what is the strategy? Like, because clearly it's not give Trump ayahuasca. You got like Nishay Devano and Brian Pace talking about psychedelics as non-specific amplifiers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Dennis McKenna wants to give, to make world leaders drink ayahuasca before they take office. And it's like, well, that's sweet, but that could completely backfire and turn them into like, acid cult leaders.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this? Like, what is the bridge here? Like, how do we actually get people to embrace the actual cyclicity of life and to release our addictions to these, this sort of like death-defying, immortalist, transhumanist, we're going to make 80-year-olds look like 20-year-olds for a 200 years thing.
Yeah. There's a lot there.
That's a long question. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So immediately what I think of is like the idea of rites of passage versus people coming to the idea of becoming more wise or whatever, or like just learning and adapting and changing and growing and like never stopping to learn is so different than a artificial want to be young, right? So like whether it's Botox and or whatever, I think you got to embrace this one-way journey and try to get as much as you can in. And sometimes, like psychedelics can snap it on for you. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it, like I don't know what would happen if you gave everybody in Congress, a heroic dose of psilocybin, and what would they come out on the other side? I mean, it might break some of them because they'll realize the horrible shit that they've done. And that's a lot to process, right? So you can't just drop psychedelics on people either. So, man, I don't know. I think about, you have kids and kids change the equation because like, I want to be around for as long as I can. Like I want to see them grow up and all that stuff, even though I know that that's inevitably in most cases not going to be up to me or that possible. Like we're finite beings, right? So future fossils, right? So it's just like, and I'm a big fan of Tom Robbins. One of my favorite books is Jitterbug Perfume. And I don't know if you've ever read that, but it's about sort of immortality and this one being having the curse of immortality. And it's just,
I love that book.
It's just such a good book.
It's so good.
So like, I just want it to be good while we're here. Like the now and all of that, Ram Dass knew some shit, like be here now. Like it makes sense. All you have is the present, the present. That's why they call it a gift. It's all real. It's all true. And I just don't think enough people give that enough time in their day to even process it, right? Like the idea of thinking about death not in the way of like being afraid or trying to stave it off because you really don't have much control over that in most cases, but thinking about it like because it gives it meaning to go through this well, to have a positive impact if you can pull it off, to I don't know, leave it better than you found it kind of thing. Like it's collective. It was what I was talking about earlier. Like there are some real like just truths that we should realize. And the thing that makes the utopian ideal a utopian almost impossibility is that a lot of people will never get to that. A lot of people will never think that way or see that. And that sucks, in so many ways. But I mean, I think having, honestly, and this might seem crazy, but I think that this medium, this long form medium, is what can save us, whether it's through a platform like TikTok or just podcasts or whatever. Longer conversations and collective awakening is such a loaded term to throw on it. Like I should have crystals all over me or something, but we got to have better conversations as a human organism, and that's why I was really hoping the aliens would come at once and you could unite. I love that idea. Languages don't even matter anymore. You can translate languages instantaneously. That was kind of the last thing holding us up, really. Is now we can all communicate in real time. Okay, let's get going on the real shit. Y'all want to go to another planet? Let's do that together. Y'all want to do something good? All right, we got plenty of food. We know how to grow. We got plenty of water. We know how to get it around. Let's go. I honestly am hopeful for that. Cautiously optimistic for that. You know what I mean? I see it in my kids. I see the hope in my kids. They're not stupid like I was. In some ways they're stupid just because they're kids, but in terms of they look at the things that we argue about and why are you even talking about that? That's stupid. They can look at infinite growth model and be quarter, how are you going to make more money every quarter? How about just make enough money and be, keep doing that every month? That works too.
I mean, I think that your comment on I know you and I are both podcast evangelists, right? But it really is, again, it's about the pace of life and the scale of life to which we are attuned as human beings, and I think one of the things that people loved about the film The Matrix, but is really sort of, they can just download Kung Fu into Neo. But at the same time, that's in an actual brain, that would probably be the release of some kind of invasive species that would just topple ecosystems. I don't think your brain, that's basically what unintegrated psychedelic experience is, right? Is a flood of new information and novelty that can trigger latent schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. If you're not careful, you're gonna tip over the apple cart. And I see podcasts as part of this scale back to it amazes me and kind of horrifies me how many people I hear from that listen to podcasts at 2x. I took kind of pride in hearing from some of the listeners of Complexity podcast. I normally listen to podcasts at 2x, but yours are so rich that I have to slow it down to the speed at which you actually speak. And I think that it's good, because it isn't really, I had a buddy who got adrenal cancer this year, overclocking himself constantly. It's caffeine doesn't really give you energy. It just makes your body think you're not actually exhausted. Yeah. And so I'm sitting here going, all right, I got a sweet tooth and a caffeine fix. And, at what point am I going to have to pump the brakes for the sake of my own well-being? Yeah. And I think podcasts are part of that. They're to the degree that I double down on your note of optimism here. I think the growing popularity of this medium has been an indicator that people are eager to slow down and have deeper thoughts than to just constantly pursue ever more. But of course, at the same time, you're seeing a proliferation of, the executive summary and newsletter roll-ups and, Instagram and every social media platform is doing 15-second video now.
Yeah.
TikTok. Like TikTok, if you look at it from orbit, TikTok is beating podcasts. But also, like the old fogies in charge who don't understand the future, just like painted a target on TikTok.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, this whole conversation, it's kind of convoluted, right? It's like, well, maybe the ants actually do understand, at least to some degree, the pace at which these decisions need to be processed. Or,
I think people's attention span was incorrectly estimated to be extremely low, and their capacity to absorb also to be excessively low across the board, maybe across a larger percentage than the population than anybody thought. To think that the biggest podcast on the planet generally is about 3 hours long. That is incredible, right? I think people's attention span, if you have good material, is extremely large. I think their attention span for things that are throwaway and shit is very small. But that's where most of the energy goes. I have hope. Now, I will say, too, that there's a demographic that's very... we'll see what happens with the next generation, because they don't seem to tolerate bullshit, which is great. See through a lot of things and don't care about the rules, and that's good. We need that. But they're also traumatized and in some ways captured in a way that we got to be careful about too, right? So, it's rough. Like I didn't have that when I was a kid. I had 3 channels basically. That's how old I am. So like, there was news. It was real news for the most part. There was only 3 channels. At least I thought so. But then I read like these books about that time, and the bullshit was happening then too, and they were using the news to do it. And you couldn't escape. Now you can get every side of every story. So cutting through bullshit is going to be the best skill possible, and it needs to be sharp as a razor, because now you got AI and deep fakes and video, and you got to somehow be able to just get to what is real, what is true, and what is good. And that's where everybody kind of needs to land. And I don't know how better to get that happening,
If only I can just have an algorithm tell me
be so much better
what to watch and listen to and who to trust. Who you really ought to have on the show at some point is Nick Brigham Adams from Goodly Labs. Goodly Labs is working. I am 100% behind their work, and they're working on new kind of like collective fact checking and review infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right? Ways that people can use the tools of the internet to evaluate this stuff for one another without adding additional layers of algorithmic intermediation.
Yeah.
But like really, really leveraging collective human intelligence in a way that makes these problems easier rather than harder, which is what we've been doing for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
So, so yeah. That's just my ad for Goodly Labs. I haven't had him on Future Fossils yet, but he's on the short list.
Nice. I'll check him out.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, this has been a wild and fun conversation, as I knew it would be. But let's do it again soon, and feel free to plug anything you need and send me as many show notes as you want to add and links that you need. I'll get it out there.
Matt. You're a mensch. I love talking with you, and I appreciate you giving me a platform upon which to stump when is this coming out?
It'll be this week, probably.
Roughly. So you still have time, if you're listening to this, to sign up for the Future Fossils Substack or Patreon. It's Michael Garfield at either of those platforms. And join the probably rather large group of people that I'm going to be leading through a book club on Jurassic Park and how it relates to all of this stuff, how it relates to the evolution of technology and, the horrors of privatization of science and the evolution of entertainment media, and it's going to be really, really fun. I used to be a paleontologist, so I'm going to bring that extra dinosaur stuff angle to this also. And then all those conversations, and I'm going to do on April 29th, we're going to do our first call for Jurassic Park. And then sometime this summer, we're going to do a couple calls for The Lost World, the book. And then that material, and then a bunch of follow-up interviews I'm going to do on Future Fossils with scientists and philosophers and other interesting people, is all going to feed into the book that I'm writing about this stuff and about how it is that we navigate the 21st century in a landscape of technologies that are beyond our ability to understand, and the uncertainty of living through such a turbulent transitional time. So really, Future Fossils is coming of age.
Yeah.
At this point, it's hybridizing with the work I did for SFI and Complexity Podcast, and I'm going to be really excited to lead and steward, I would say, even more like these conversations from which I expect to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to write this book, and I really we didn't even talk about my music, but I just released a live album from some shows I played supporting Shane Moss here in Santa Fe. Shane, I love.
Amazing.
If your folks are, I'm sure, familiar with him. So there's a lot of projects in the mix right now, but you can find me on Substack or Patreon and put food in the mouths of my children and help me feel a little bit more secure about this insane decision that I've made to chase after these Moby Dick size projects. And
nothing but
there you go.
Nothing but luck, man. It's going to be awesome.
Thanks.
I'm sure it's going to be
Thanks
awesome.
a lot,
I really appreciate your time and diving into this stuff. Let's do it again soon because you got a lot going on, and it's always fun talking to you. Like, I had a bunch of things on the page here to talk about, and we didn't get to any of them, but I feel like it was a super fun chat anyway. So,
well, send me what we missed, and I'll prepare.
Yeah.
For the next one.
No worries,
Awesome.
man. Appreciate you. Take care, sir.
Likewise. Take care.
All right.
Under my skin, I've tried so not to give in. I said to myself, this affair ain't never gonna go too well. But why should I try to resist when, baby, I know too well now, hey